And welcome to a belatedly reactionary... yeah, I realize I just contradicted myself with those two words. Let's just back up and generically say, and welcome to a special mini-sode of the Oddity archive. So anyway, this is at least partially in response to a succession of online articles that have been popping up over the last few years now. And while it is nice in its own way to see more people getting into older home video and audio formats, it is leading to some misinformation. So the one that really crawls up my butt is a line of articles over the last few years regarding laser rot on Laserdiscs. So first and foremost, yes, laser rot is real. No one's trying to deny that. However, I do think the problem is somewhat overblown. Now, on the off chance you've wandered into this video not knowing what laser rot is, it's chemical decomposition usually caused by glue and/or substandard manufacturing conditions, which ultimately leads to playback problems. So the vast majority of laserdiscs are dual layered, and if there are any contaminants between those layers, it can react with the glue holding those two layers together and cause rot. And occasionally it's just bad glue. But anyway, the end result ranges from maybe a little speckling in the video on up to some mildly distorted audio, on up to some more distorted video and audio, on up to discs that are outright unplayable. Now, sometimes the rot physically manifests itself on the disc. So for a good extreme example, there's a fair amount of UK titles that are so visibly rotted that you can tell just by looking at it that it is no good. And this mainly applies to ones manufactured by PDO. And incidentally, they were at least partially responsible for that run of audio CDs during the late 80s and early 90s that after a certain point would turn kind of a bronze color and they would become unplayable. Not by design or anything, it's just they messed up. So anyway, getting back to Laserdiscs, there is an out for Europeans, for PAL users. Over in Europe, they did get, I think two, I'm not positive, but they got certainly at least one Pioneer Laserdisc player that was multi-region. So if you got one of those, especially these days with the internet, you could just fleabay and import. You'd have to settle for an NTSC copy, but import whatever movie, and I'd say there's a 95% plus chance that it will be just fine. Anyway, I'm off track here. The point of this segment is supposed to be about the two main visible forms of laser rot. So first up, we've got what I personally refer to as green slime syndrome. Now that phrase, green slime, does get used in other parts of the Laserdisc community for something else. I'll get to that. I don't necessarily agree with it, so this is Benny Boy's version of green slime, so pure opinion. So of course it would be something like this. Anyway, so if we look at the rim of the disc, the outer rim, if I can make the light hit it just right, you'll see some kind of blotches down in there. And those are, if it's not going to do anything with this white light, but if it was more of a natural sunlight, it does occasionally take on kind of a dark green color. And between that and the blotchy nature, I call it green slime just because it kind of looks more like it. But yes, that's what I refer to as green slime. Now, there's a what looks like a big nasty fingerprint on here, and with my luck it will not appear on camera. And well, it actually is a fingerprint right here. Again, I don't think it's going to turn up. Yeah, sort of. That is, it is a fingerprint, but I can't just wipe it off because it's between the layers. So somebody got a little sloppy at the time. Now, this is indeed a dead side. I mean, I've uncovered it and I've done videos on that. So if you're not familiar with that, go check that out. So I think we can figure out why it became a dead side. But yeah, just a little bonus there. That is not rot. So next up, we've got my copy of the 1978 film Foul Play. And this was introduced on Laserdisc in 1981. My copy, I think, was manufactured in 81 or 82. But it's the only one of mine that has that kind of British styled rot. So you can see kind of a black spot there. That is where it's just flaked off somewhere down the line. So it's not really been a problem for me. And this disc is perfectly playable, and it helps that this is not in a play area. You can see that ring. But yes, it does exist. And if you have enough of that, yeah, you are going to have problems. So anyway, let me put a little protection on that, because this is the green slime that tends to get referred to. I can kind of see it. If you hit it just right with the light, it is kind of greenish. Of course, it helps that this has got a green label. But what you're seeing is, of course, these discs are mostly dual layered. In this case, this is a one-sided disc as far as playback goes, but for the would-be side too, they just used a clear piece of plastic, clear hunk of plastic. And what you're seeing is that spritz of glue from the factory. So even though it looks like it's got a texture to it, it does not. It is perfectly smooth. But this is what they're usually referring to when they say green slime. So then we have the issue of non-visible laser rot, the kind that you don't know you have until you stick it in the machine. So in this case, we've got the first of the 3 discs of the original Disco Vision, of course, issue of Saturday Night Fever. And side 1 of this, so I guess I should flip this over here. You wouldn't know by looking at it, and I can kind of wave it around. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it, but you throw this into any Laserdisc player and it'll just lock up on you. Now, I was able to fudge it, more or less, so I can throw my Laserdisc player into service mode with a service remote, and I can force the laser up into about 3 minutes into the side, and then it plays just fine and I can watch the movie. So right as you're seeing the title screen, as you're hearing the Bee Gees singing Staying Alive. So yeah, that's more the kind of thing that you could run into and not even know it. And of course, it doesn't hurt that this is one of the first DiscoVision titles. I think this was issued in early 79, and I'm pretty sure this was manufactured in 79. It's got the original DiscoVision styled box. Now, incidentally, I do have another copy of this that I fleabaged in route. It hasn't shown up yet, unfortunately. But I'm hoping, since the other 2 discs are perfectly fine, that disc 1 of that copy is good, and I can Frankenstein together a full working DiscoVision copy of Saturday Night Fever, because I'm poetic that way. So anyway, let's take a cut here, and let's truly get down to the meat of this episode. So what truly spurred this video was recently I was chatting with somebody online about Laserdiscs, and they mentioned laser rot and how the movies are disintegrating and oh, it's so horrible. So I said in response, you know, I've got discs that I purchased back in the early mid-2000s, got my first player in early 03, and some discs that I picked up from 03 to 05, and some of those discs were 20 plus years old already at the time, and some of those already had rot. But most of them I've thrown in at some point in the last few years, and as best as I can tell, they are no worse today. And again, in some case, we're talking almost another 20 years removed from the original manufacturing, so 40 years plus in some cases. So it hit me soon after that I've still got all the transfers I did when I made the original Format Wars archive episode back in 2012. Still got all the discs. You know what? Let me dig them back out and I'll take another pass at them and we'll stack those up against my passes from just shy of 10 years ago. Maybe I should have waited a few more months to do this. But whatever. Too late to turn back now. So I have done everything in my power to duplicate the setup from 2012. And I've succeeded minus one ingredient, and that would be the Laserdisc player that I was using back then. I don't remember the model number at this point, but it was just a lower end Pioneer model, and I think it was from 1989 or 90, and I gave that machine away at some point. So we'll be using my composite-only Pioneer CLD S304 from 1995 for this. I did a Ben's junk on this at one point fairly early on. It sucks, but it exists. But the 304 is my current, if you will, sacrificial player. The specs are a little higher than that other Pioneer, but it's still very much a consumer machine, so hopefully it's comparable. Otherwise, everything will be the same. So my setup was back then running composite out of the player to my 2002-ish Sony Digital 8 Handycam, which can pass along without tape, mind you, the signal to my 2011 Sony Vaio Windows 7 laptop, and then just the little capture program on Windows Movie Maker. So we're just doing that all again, just with a different player. Now I should note that my old 89-ish Pioneer would default to having the CX noise reduction on, regardless of whether or not the disc was CX encoded. As such, the 79 to 84 discs all have the CX on for this new batch of tests, just so they match. Now, starting in 84, 85, the disc itself would signal the player and it would all become automatic. So anything really from, call it 85 on, will just be whatever the machine gives me. For all intents and purposes, I don't have any great control. So with that, I am going to run a nice long succession of clips, starting with a screenshot of the date stamp from the original 2012 transfer, so you can see the date, a clip of that 2012 transfer, and then a clip of the 2022 redo. And as a bonus, I'll throw in just some general tests, just to give you a little cross-section of different periods of Laserdiscs and so on. But I think you'll see that if the rot has gotten any worse, it's minimal. So I would say at the current rate, the last Laserdisc player on Earth will die before the disc does. And really what I'm trying to convey here is I think most of the rot happened within a few years of manufacturing, and it mostly just kind of levels off over time. So if you've got a disc that is indeed totally screwed, just know that it's probably been screwed for a very long time already. So a little advice to the newbies, if you're just getting into Laserdiscs, don't let the whole rot thing scare you off. In nearly 20 years and to the tune of 300 titles, I have only had 2 to date that are totally screwed, and you saw one of them already. So my advice is treat your Laserdiscs like you would vinyl records. Store them upright, keep them somewhere where the temperature and humidity and such stay fairly consistent, keep them dry, and for the most part I think they'll be just fine. But otherwise, that is going to be it for me on the vocal front for today. I'll leave you with my tests and the results thereof, and any further comments I have will be in text form. So with that, I will talk to you again soon.
Two elderly women are at a Catskill Mountain resort, and one of them says, "Boy, the food at this place is really terrible." The other one says, "Yeah, I know, and such small portions." I'm paraphrasing. "I would never want to belong to any club that would have someone like me for a member." Two elderly women are at a Catskill Mountain resort, and one of them says, "Boy, the food at this place is really terrible." The other one says, "Yeah, I know, and such small portions." I'm paraphrasing. "I would never want to belong to any club that would have someone like me for a member."
It's strictly the movies. It's strictly the movies.
No, he's nice, really. He brought me home last night, and then he had the police bring my car back this morning.
Hiya, Toots!
No, he's nice, really. He brought me home last night, and then he had the police bring my car back this morning.
Hiya, Toots! Don't stare. Just get me out. Don't stare. Just get me out.
He got in here.
Is that it?
No. Here. He got in here.
Is that it?
No. Here.
There will be a short film of approximately 10 minutes before our feature presentation.
If certain modern theories concerning the shape of the world had not proved to be disastrously wrong.
My name is Sidney Westerville. I'm the owner of this antique tavern, Mungut Valley, New York State.
I have one question, Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
Bobby must go right here. Okay, cracker open.
Proved to be disastrously wrong.